Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Saturday Night Sanity Revolt. Tonight we will be looking through two big stories. We'll be doing kind of a deeper dive on the Somalian fraud. I did several hours of research on that over the last week, um, and that is what I had prepped. So that's what we're going to be doing. Um, and then we'll also be briefly going over the Venezuela attack um, and talking about that. Uh, and then we'll be out for the night. I am here at Seek. That's why I'm in a different location, and the camera looks like crap. Also, there's really crappy lighting in this room. Um, but before we get to any of that, I am going to post the link to the stream on a few different of my platforms, just so that everybody knows it's here. We are live. Until then, I will keep talking so that there's no dead air. So we'll just be posting that link, and then we'll be getting into Somalian fraud and the attacks on Venezuela, the arrest of Nicolas Maduro. Um, and there's a funny connection between the two things, but we'll get to that at the end of the stream. So I hope everyone will enjoy that tonight. If you are in the chat, go ahead and say hi so I know you're here. I hope everyone is having a great day. Oh, Happy Random Art is here. Nick Prolix is here. Legate Agrestes is here. Um, Daniel Pacelli is here. Sorry, guys, I had to post the link in a couple different places. Like I said, I'm going to scoot over so the chat is in a better spot. I'm going to scoot the other direction so the chat is in a better spot. And then I'm going to turn my computer this way. And I'm going to rotate the camera very gingerly because it is literally balanced on a monitor stand. Um, like that. So, dude, I don't like where this. Okay, here we go. So, I hope everyone is doing great. We're going to jump right into it because I have plans after this. Like I said, I am at Seek. I'm going to be doing a couple things with some friends. I'm in Columbus. I'm not actually at Seek. I don't have a pass. I borrowed somebody else's pass while they were busy yesterday and walked around a little bit. I will say, focus. This is their worst, by far worst physical layout of a Seek I've ever been to, and this is the fifth or sixth one I've been to. I've been to Chicago, St. Louis, Indianapolis, Salt Lake, um, and there was one more that I went to in college. It would have been 2019. No, I've only been to five because I think it would have been 2019. Um, so I am wearing the Knuff hoodie, but we are wearing it as a bottom layer for the January Sixers jersey. Um, and then because I'm using just a ceiling light that's in this room I'm staying in this Airbnb, I couldn't put the hat on because the lighting is bad. My face is dark. Um, can we put the hat on? We can actually get away with it. If I tilt this up like this, we're okay. So go Hoosiers. Rose Bowl win. Huge W for the Hoosiers. Alabama is bad at football. And Kurt Signetti is the new Nick Saban. Where's the Fish Fear Me hat? It's at my house in Steubenville, Ohio, 3 hours away. Um, Kurt Signetti is the new Nick Saban, and that's just a reality that the rest of the country is going to have to learn to live with. You know how I know immigration total assimilation to a foreign culture isn't possible. Because I haven't even assimilated to liking Ohio State, and I've lived here for 4 years now. Like, I don't like Ohio State. You think that, like, you know? Um, so, do you have a pocket version? A pocket version of what? Anyway, um, so I hope everyone's doing great tonight. I don't know what Amatricina is, but Legate Agrestis is making it. So we're going to jump into it. Like I said, I prepped tonight so I could do a quick stream so I could go hang out with my friends. Do I have a pocket version of the Fish Fear Me hat? I do not. Um, it's too big. So I did a lot of prep. All this. Here's your teaser for tonight. So he's making pasta. All right. So the Somalian fraud thing kind of came to light most recently with the Nick Shirley video. Nick Shirley did a great video on it. If you haven't seen it, I would recommend it because we're not going to talk about everything in it. We're just going to talk about the more like substantive things in the video. And I say substantive because the large majority of the video is just made up of him going with the boomer he teamed up with, whose name is David, to these daycare centers. And they go to these daycare centers and they ask people, where are the kids at? Or they go to these fake healthcare centers and they go, what's the rate for this thing? Um, and that's really good investigative work, but it is not like substantive of the larger problem and substantive towards the larger problem, like what's going on, how it's happening, what the numbers are. So I would recommend you watch it. I also would recommend that Nick Shirley had to get security for this investigation. He's done a couple other investigations that I've seen, none that I've really paid close attention to and watched. But he, I think it was Black Line Security, um, and you can go donate to his security fund. Um, Not necessarily to him, but you can donate towards the security he needs for doing these kinds of investigations in places like this where there is danger. Um, so I would recommend doing that, and I would recommend watching his video. So let's get right into it. According to some federal investigations, it looks like there's about $9 billion of fraud in the Somali community in Minnesota. Um, the Somalian GDP is $12 billion. So um, roughly 75% of Somalia's entire GDP has been stolen from U.S. taxpayers uh, in the last 5 years in the state of Minnesota. Um, at least some of this money ended up in the hands of the terrorist organization Al-Shabaab, which is a Somalian radical Islam terrorist organization. And the three places that there was the fraud is in adult daycare, child daycare, and healthcare, which all also connected to the fourth place, which was transport companies, fake transport for non-emergency medical transport. So it's like giving you a ride to the dentist or to a doctor's appointment if you can't get yourself there, is the idea of these companies. There are 1,200 non-emergency medical transport companies in Minneapolis, I believe it was, and 800 of them are Somali owned. At one building in Minneapolis, there are 14 Somali owned healthcare companies in the same address. And at another place on the same address, there is one building in St. Paul. There are 22 Somali owned healthcare companies at this same address. Minnesota law mandates that federal or state employees report fraud when they know of it. Nick Shirley believes, based on his investigation, or sorry, David, the boomer, who was with him, believes, based on his research into the fraud, that Walls did know and is in violation of this law and should therefore be charged. Nick Shirley believes that sorry, nope, I crossed that one out. That was wrong. Okay. So there's a couple, so that's, they were escorted out of one building and trespassed by the police. And you can, as I said, donate to Nick's security fund, which is very important. Um, okay, so Tim Walz had a press conference 2 weeks ago in response to this stuff, and Tim Walz said that there will be more arrests. That's a direct quote. And then he also said, in quotes, this is on my watch, and I am accountable for this. So it sounds like an admission of guilt. If there's any evidence that he did know about it, that is an admission of guilt, which will make prosecution very interesting, and his defense attorney very unhappy if there's any prosecution. Walz claims that he stopped payments to some of these medical companies in July, but then on X, when the federal HHS stopped payments for childcare in Minnesota, he got very upset and said that it was depriving people who do need childcare of the money. So it seems like he's playing both sides of the coin there, where he wants to say he's willing to stop payments, but then when the Trump administration stops the payments, he's unwilling to admit that that is the right thing to do in this situation. Hi, Unleashed. I'm well. I hope you're well. He said that extrapolating the numbers is not helpful in his press conference. And then there were two investigators who spoke briefly during the press conference. One of them said that of the $18 billion, $10 billion is subject to electronic visit verification. EVV, so I did a lot of research into EVV. It took me quite a while to figure out what everything going on with this is. So EVV requires that these providers, when they go to someone's home, they document the kind of service, who the recipient of the service is, what date it happened on, the location of the service, the provider, and the timestamps. Now, here's the thing. In most states, from what I could tell, EVV requires a GPS-enabled device. And in fact, from what I can tell, the federal law mandating EVV mandates GPS. However, I was not able to find any language on Minnesota's Department of Human Services website that mandated GPS or geolocation-enabled devices be used for EVV. But I was able to find situations where there are exceptions from using a smartphone. For instance, a healthcare provider can call from the phone of the person whom they're providing service to when they are there to verify that they visited. Now, this obviously leaves a huge hole, because if the patients are in on the fraud, then they can just let somebody use their home phone, call and say that they're there, provide the service, and then leave, and nothing happens, and still do it. So also the GPS, even if there is GPS, it doesn't mean that they're actually doing the services. So the GPS verification doesn't really seem to solve the main problem there. Walz also, at the end, totally redirected to Epstein and then asked for more federal police funding, which is ironic since the Minnesota Democrats were one of the leading voices for defunding the police. So it's interesting that he decided to redirect to be like, oh, I need more funding for police, and you should release the Epstein files instead of focusing so much on this fraud. But that is what he did. The next thing is that Senator John Kennedy, gave a speech on the floor. I forget what the date on that was. Hold on, let me pull it up. I have all my sources saved. Da-da-da-da-da. That was 4 weeks ago. So December 4th, Senator John Kennedy gave a speech on the Senate floor. And I'm sorry, guys, the reason we're not doing reactions tonight is because the internet in here is bad. I also don't have a second monitor. Yeah, I don't have my control stuff, so I'm just telling you what was said. And then we'll get to reactions at the end, what I'm thinking about all this stuff. John Kennedy said, quote, over $1 billion in 5 years. I'm unclear. I haven't been able to figure out where the discrepancies between the over $1 billion and the $9 billion is coming from. he did say one thing which was really interesting. He said, "I'm not here to criticize the Somali community." Obviously, here's the thing. If the Somali community is uniquely guilty of this kind of fraud at a level well beyond their population in Minneapolis and Minnesota, um, it seems pretty clear to me that the community and the culture, that community and culture does need to be criticized. There's something about that community, that culture, that is um, a problem and should be criticized, and we should say so. Um, I think that if this is all true, then we should seriously look into denaturalizing and deporting a lot of these people, because if they're willing to defraud taxpayers for hundreds of millions to billions of dollars, then it seems likely they're also willing to defraud the government as to immigration status, and many of them may have committed immigration fraud. We do know that a leading member of the Somali community in Minneapolis, Ilhan Omar, did do that. We know for a fact that she did. She married her brother so that he could get citizenship. Um, she's guilty of immigration fraud. So we need to look into a lot of those things. Um, the There were some main hubs, John Kennedy says, that helped feed the money to these Somalian child cares that the fraud happened in. Uh, Unleashed, thank you for the follow. Feeding Our Future was the one who came to the government and said they were going to be feeding hungry children. It's the one that Ilhan Omar was specifically questioned about in that famous clip of her asking if she regretted anything that she did, and she said no. So Feeding Our Future was a big one, and at the height, at their biggest request, their biggest grant, they got over $100 million in 1 year. Um, they got much more than that. The previous, all combined, they were getting up to that number. They got over 100 million. It was like 20, then 30, then 40, then 60, and 100. So it went up. So they've received, it looks like, over 300 million to that one charity, Feeding Our Future. Um, um, Another charity run by the same people um, was for housing homeless people. They also got up to over $100 million a year, with a similar step up to that number. And then the one that the child cares are related to, so this is the most infamous one, was helping teach and special education for autistic children. Now, a couple things on this. First of all, the number I've given you for the previous two things, they got to the point where they were requesting over $400 million a year, and they got into a total of upwards of $900 million, if I remember what Senator Kennedy said correctly. And so, oh goodness, there we go. So that's what Senator Kennedy said about that they got to over $900 million total, and at one point over $400 million in a year. Now, how they were doing this. So this is where the numbers and the famous clips in the Nick Shirley video where he's saying, like, where are all these kids? It says it says you have permission for this many kids. Where are all these kids? Hello, Christian Giola. It's good to see you. So what was happening was they got a bunch of money to teach autistic children, and then they realized there wasn't enough autistic children around to run this as an effective scam. So they started going to Somali parents, and Senator Kennedy said from what he could tell, it was exclusively Somali parents, and bribing them between $400 and $1,500 per child that they could fraudulently certify as autistic, so then they could say they were being taken care of there and get the money for that child care from the government. Now, the question becomes, when the government figured this out, why didn't it stop? Senator Kennedy says that Feeding Our Future threatened to sue the government on the grounds of on grounds of racism when the government threatened to stop funding, saying that if they were to stop, they would sue them on racism and discrimination grounds for discriminating against Somalians and minorities. Um, the legislator auditor of Minnesota said, quote, "The threat of litigation and the negative press affected how the state politicians used their regulatory power," unquote. A fraud investigator in the Attorney General's office said, quote, "There is a perception that forcefully tackling this issue would cause political backlash from the Somali community, which is a core voting bloc." Um, and Senator John Kennedy gave a source for the aforementioned allegation that some of the money went to Al-Shabaab, a terrorist organization in Somalia, as the Senate City Journal, a subsidiary of the Manhattan Institute. He also mentioned the very popular, very long post I'm sure you've seen on Twitter, which alleges that in which Minnesota DHS employees allege that they did tell Tim Walz and that he and his office actively worked to suppress the story. The quote is, "Tim Walz is 100% responsible for massive fraud in Minnesota. We let Tim Walz know of fraud early on, hoping for a partnership in stopping fraud. But no, we got the opposite response. Tim Walz systematically retaliated against whistleblowers using monitoring, threats, repression, and did his best to discredit fraud reports. Instead of partnership, we got the full weight of retaliation by Tim Walz. Certain DFL members and indif- and an indifferent DFL is the Minnesota Democratic Party. I forget what the actual full title of that party is. I'm sure Svenicus, who's from Minnesota, could tell us if he knows, that would be helpful. Certain DFL members and an indifferent mainstream media. We got the full weight of retaliation by Tim Walz, certain Democrat Party members, and an indifferent mainstream media. It's scary, isolating, and left us wondering who we can turn to. In addition to retaliating against whistleblowers, Tim Walz disempowered the office of the legislative auditor, allowing agencies to disregard their audit findings and guidance. Media and politicians supporting Tim Walz or the Democrat Party of Minnesota agenda attacked whistleblowers who were trying to raise red flags on fraudulent activities. This is a cascade of systemic failures leading up to Tim Walz. Agency leaders appointed by Tim Walz willfully disregarded the rules and laws to keep fraud reports quiet, even to the extent of threatening families of whistleblowers. These same leaders are not qualified for their jobs, instead getting leadership jobs via Tim Walz friendship, so state government were left floundering. Democrat Party lawmakers refused to stop fraud and deflected any serious conversation to stop fraud. Biased mainstream media coverage such as WCCO and NPR, those are going to be Minnesota local media, showed absolutely no interest in covering fraud happening in our own state. Programs, especially in behavioral health and disability services, were built without any guardrails against fraud, all in an attempt to extract more funding from legislature and the federal government. Democrat, Farmer, and Labor. That's correct. That's right. That's the title of the party. So that's what DFL is. And then, well, let me read chat real quick, see if there's anything, and then we'll get to the last part of this story. It's crazy to think Tim Pawlenty was the governor of Minnesota and Michelle Bachmann was a representative in Congress for the North Star State. Don't know who that is. Yeah. Okay. So, and then this is the update today on this whole story. Somalia's ambassador to the UN Abukar Dahir Osman is an administrator of a healthcare company in Cincinnati, Ohio. Um, and his healthcare company in Cincinnati, Ohio, their national provider identification number is on a list for exclusion from Medicare and Medicaid um, acceptance because they have been found guilty of fraud. So the Somali ambassador to the UN is a United States citizen who has, it looks like, committed this fraud, a similar fraud case. And Data Republican found the NPI number, the National Provider Identification Number, on the Medicaid list. Data Republican also said that at the same time as he was running this, um, he was administering this healthcare company in Cincinnati, he was employed by Medicaid. So it looks like he was using his employment at Medicaid to commit the fraud to his own enrichment, and he is now the chair of the UN Security Council. Keep that in mind, the chair of the UN Security Council, because we'll be coming back to that. Also, Amy Bock, Aimee Bock, Bock, who was the leader of Feeding Our Future, the children's, the fake charity um, for feeding kids, supposedly feeding hungry kids, is listed as the contact for more than 45 child cares in Minneapolis. Yeah, Patrick Graham, it does look like that. It's hard to tell, but it does look that way. Libs of TikTok also, and this is the funniest part of the whole thing, Libs in TikTok received a DM from the silver checkmarked Somali. It's the Somali embassy to Serbia, Somali embassy in Serbia, received a DM from them saying, quote, "Stop laying about Somalia." So they misspelled it. But she received a DM from them, which is very, very funny. So, any questions? Somalians did a bunch of fraud. We need to investigate them. We need to deport every one of them who has committed it. And put Tim Walz in jail. Yeah, it's really, really bad. This kind of thing happens because the Somali community is so close knit. They value ethnic loyalty and operating as an ethnic bloc more than they value the truth, frankly. And they do not care that the fact that they're committing fraud. They're just more interested in getting money for themselves and helping their own community. They see you as the enemy because you're white. Um, and they see themselves as friends purely because they're Somalian, and they are willing to rip you off to that end and do not think it's wrong. Um, and this is a huge problem in majority Muslim countries, right? I mean, we talk about taqiyya all the time, but frankly, every Muslim who's ever taken the oath of citizenship should be deported. Um, the Muslim religion allows them to lie for the spreading of their religion. And as a result, you cannot trust their oaths. Um, so they should be deported because it's not possible to know that they're taking their oath of citizenship um, with intention to keep it. And their religion is completely incompatible with American culture and society. You just need to deport them. We have to get rid of them, all of them. If you're Muslim, you cannot be an American citizen, frankly. Um, you should not be allowed to vote uh, or receive any, federal assistance or have any say over the future of America um, because your religion makes you incompatible with us. So let's move on to Venezuela. Um, so Venezuela, last night, Nicolas Maduro was arrested. The United States military has been off the coast of Venezuela for some time. Um, Last night they went in, shut all the lights out in Caracas, arrested Venezuela, and blew up Hugo Chavez's grave. Um, I think they did it just. I literally think they blew up Hugo Chavez's grave just because they could and they had an extra bomb or two. Like it's so funny. It's such a funny thing to do to just blow up the former dictator's grave because you could, I guess. And he was terrible. He was super evil. Um, Make a point. Uh, yeah. So um, the operation was done in collaboration with U.S. law enforcement. So the FBI was in on the operation because Maduro has been indicted. Um, Debate Sam Shamoon. I don't do debates, and I don't know enough about Sam Shamoon to know what I would disagree with him on. Um, but I don't do debates, and I don't know what you want me to debate him on. If you have a question about something you disagree with me on, I'd be happy to answer your question. But as far as formal debates with people who I'm unfamiliar with what they believe, that's just not a not that's a non-starter. Um, so the operation was done in collaboration with the FBI because Maduro has been um, indicted in the United States. He's um, indicted in the United States, which means that um, it means two things actually. First of all, it means this technically was not a war that they were doing. They were arresting a foreign criminal to stand trial in the United States. So the whole like this is unconstitutional and you need congressional permission to go do this. I mean, a couple things about that. One, um, I mean, Congress is like just full of people who are untrustworthy. These staffers are unloyal. They hate Trump. Um, let's just be honest. Whether or not you agree with the attack, let's just be intellectually honest enough to admit that if Trump were to have tried to get permission for the attack from Congress, what would have happened is that some liberal Democrat staffer who hated Trump would have literally warned the Venezuelans it was coming just to try to make Trump look bad. Right? Let's just be honest about that. Um, the second thing, um, the Constitution is made to serve the common good, and if it's not doing that, you should ignore it. Right? If a law is not serving the common good, and you are the executive in charge of enforcing and executing the law, um, and your job is to bring about the common good, then it is not only your right, but it is your duty to ignore the law in that case. And so, if it were an act of war, then I don't have a problem with ignoring that in this instance. And further, I don't think it is. I don't think you can call this like a war starting in the strictest sense. So, yeah. Uh, Another thing to keep in mind is that, and Trump said this, is that um, every drug boat which brings in drugs by sea to the United States from Venezuela kills about, on average, 25,000 people. Um, and Maduro, so I think there's a misunderstanding by a lot of well-meaning Republicans that Maduro is just seen as like this socialist guy who generally is not great. We don't like him. He kind of turns a blind eye to the cartels because he doesn't really care. He's more about his own money. But that's not the case in Venezuela. And Trump said this. If you guys watched the Trump speech, I would recommend you watch the Trump speech. Trump said this, and the Cartel de los Soles, if you want to look it up, is a cartel made up of the Venezuelan military, personally run by Nicolas Maduro. The cartel importing the drugs into the United States is not a cartel. It's not a cartel that happens to operate out of Venezuela that Maduro takes some bribes from or turns a blind eye to. No, Maduro is effectively the El Chapo of Venezuela. He just also happens to be the president of their government. Um, Maduro also, according to the Human Rights Foundation and according to Trump, and I mean this is just kind of commonly accepted, but the even liberal organizations like the Human Rights Foundation have acknowledged that Maduro runs Tren de Agua. Maduro sends Tren de Agua to foreign soil to execute hits and do um, terrorism on dissidents and people he doesn't like or for political reasons. Uh, and So Maduro is not a socialist leader who happens to look the other way on some bad stuff. Maduro runs these organizations, right? Maduro is the leader of Tren de Agua. Maduro is the leader of the cartel that is importing drugs into the United States. He's not connected to them. He's not friends with them. He's not looking the other way. He's not taking bribes. He's in charge. Okay? This guy is doing those things directly. He's not benefiting from them. He's doing them. Now, obviously, what we're talking about here is the fact of the matter is that we are all, a lot of the right has been pretty open that we would be fine if the United States military was sent into Mexico to kill the cartels because they're, directly harming the United States. It would meet all the requirements for just war. We've all said that, right? We all kind of just openly say like, yeah, we're fine with this. Um, and in fact, I wrote it down here. The requirements for just war are lasting, grave, and certain damage. Okay, lasting. Or there's more, but the first one is lasting, grave, and certain damage. Okay, the Cartel de los Soles was doing lasting, grave, and certain damage by importing drugs into our country. We have exhausted other means of stopping this, right? We're trying to blow up the boats. We're trying to get them to stop. We're trying to sit outside their country and say, if you don't stop this, we're going to have to come stop you. We're going to have to come get you and stop it ourselves, right? Um, we've tried that. Uh, and there has to be a serious prospect of success. Obviously, this was extremely successful. Okay? We got him. We're done. Trump said that they were expecting to have to do a second operation. They were expecting to have to be two waves, and they don't even need the second wave now. That's how good the first wave went. Okay, so that's how successful we were. Um, and then fourth, the fourth thing is the use of arms must not create greater evils than is being eliminated. That didn't happen. We took out some military sites, and we took out some military sites. We captured a criminal. We blew up a shrine to an evil man, and then we left. All right, that's not a graver evil was not created than eliminating Maduro. Okay, so let's say it was a war. It's a just war. We should have done this. Okay, um, being anti-war itself is not a principle. Just being pacifist is not a principle. The idea is that we want to be involved in just wars. We want them to be quick. We want them to be to the benefit of the United States, and we want them to be over and move on with them. That is what happened here. And if you would support this happening in Mexico to some cartel leader who you've never heard of, this is no different. You've just heard this guy's name, and he happens to run a government. Okay? All right. Now, there are some people on X claiming that this was done to appease Israel or because Maduro was anti sodomy and had outlawed usury and had outlawed abortion. That's clearly not the case. We have an indictment, okay? It was done. Gamer James, thank you for your chat. I will read that in a second. Um, It was clear that's clearly not the case. It was clearly done for the express purpose of capturing a criminal who we have under indictment, who we want to stand trial. Okay? The argument for this has been that the Venezuelan opposition leader has said that she would move the Venezuelan embassy to Jerusalem if she was to take charge. I understand this looks like one thing, but let's keep in mind, let's say, however much we may not like it, and I don't like it because I'm not a fan of Israel, and I've been pretty clear on that. Um, it's generally true that a good way to signal your alliance or friendliness to the United States is to signal friendliness to um, Israel. I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think it's, I wish it wasn't, but that is the case right now, right? If you want to signal that you're friendly to Trump or that you're on the same side as Trump or that you're on the same side as the Americans, saying nice things about Israel is a good way to signal that. Currently, I don't think it should be, but it is. So let's just be honest. Once again, even when we disagree with certain things or we don't want things to be a certain way, we have to, when we're doing politics, engage intellectually, honestly with the world as it is, not as we would like it to be. So, her saying that is a reason that we should be okay with this. Um, Not with her moving the embassy, but with like her saying this is evidence that not at or sorry, not that we should be okay with this, but that this is not evidence that this is on behalf of Israel. And if you're up in arms about some domestic culture war issue, like who cares if Maduro has outlawed abortion, if he's sending drugs to kill Americans, if he's operating a cartel and a prison gang from the presidential palace? Like, murder is murder. The guy is a murderer. You know, right wing Trump derangement syndrome is real, where you are unable to engage with politics as it is because you don't like Trump because you've decided that he's too friendly to whatever cause you dislike. That's fair. I don't like a lot of the stuff Trump does, but you have to be. You can't be a retard. You can't be a retard. Don't be retarded. Okay. Um, right? And there's a guy on Twitter who was just like right before I went live saying that the reason I said that this had nothing to do with Israel is because I worked for Matt Frad and like I should change my name to Shabbos Goy or Shabbos Thursday or whatever. And it's like, dude, I haven't worked for them in a year and I criticize Israel constantly. So if you see that boogeyman everywhere, you're stupid. You have to shut your brain off and let the adults do the thinking. Let the adults do the talking. If you looked at the Trump administration and the military carrying out what was a super fast, super efficient, super impressive military operation to capture a narco terrorist and went, I bet they did that so that Benjamin Netanyahu would be happy. Like, you're a fucking idiot. Shut the fuck up. Don't talk anymore. Delete your Twitter account. You shouldn't be allowed to engage in politics. You need to never speak about politics again. Go, like, seriously. You people cannot make every political issue about this one thing because you're completely ineffective. You make everyone else who criticizes Israel look dumb. So you make it harder for us to get results on Israel behaving in a way that is not harmful to us, right? Like, when you say that, when you go, oh yeah, like when I say I don't like Israel, I present all these arguments, and then somebody else who I agree with that on, uh, I can't read that. What does it say? Rivka the Catholic, thank you for the follow. Like, you make everyone who criticizes Israel look retarded when you say that retarded shit. Okay? So don't talk. I'm serious. Like, I'm actually serious. If you looked at this and your first thought, or you at any point thought, I wonder what Israel had to do with Nicolas Maduro being arrested, like, do not, like, delete all your social medias because you should not be allowed to speak on politics publicly. You're too stupid. Like, seriously. I understand that the boogeyman is bad, but if you see it under every rock, even the ones that it's clearly not there on, because you can't get it out of your head, you are mentally unwell. You're not capable of critical thinking. Also, this is going to get clipped and all the gropers are going to get mad, but I don't think Nick is effective. I don't see any real political change that he's made in the past 5 years. He hasn't gotten anybody elected. He hasn't stopped anybody from being elected, from what I can tell. That is not on our side. He stopped some Republicans from being elected, but he hasn't stopped any Democrats from getting elected. He hasn't got any of his people elected. Um, yeah, I'm sorry. Like you would have to point to an actual real realpolitik, real victory. He hasn't stopped. He hasn't gotten any Republicans elected himself, and he hasn't gotten any Democrats not elected. I understand he's good at getting young men to understand certain things and getting young men on our side, but like that's not effective. That's not effect in politics. That's just like a like this. That's that's good for social media, but it's not a real political victory. He's trying to shift the window. If you're gonna shift the window, you have to do it. Like that's not. I'm sorry. It just sounds like cope when you say that. Like if you want to win politics, you can't just make it so you can say more offensive things. That's not how you win elections. That's not how you make a real difference. Okay. Um, like if you like, what's the like? I'm serious. Like that's not how you win elections. Just making it to where you can say more. Like I can say things that are more racist than I could 5 years ago. That's not how you win anything. Yeah, an ideological shift is pointless. Legate. An ideological shift means little if we have no infrastructure to ensure victory in the long term. I hear what you're saying, but he's not trying to say more offensive things. Then what is he trying to do? Like just make people more right wing? What does that matter if we don't win stuff? If we don't get people elected so that we have power, what does that mean? Like what does that do? Like you can't shift the window and just say I shifted the window if you have no infrastructure. And especially if when you have people who want to build infrastructure, you decide that you hate them because they don't sufficiently agree with you. Um, yeah, like I respect Nick. I think he's probably the greatest political commentator of the generation. He's so effective at getting people to really think to like he's very effective at that. But he's not changing politics. And if you want to win, you have to get people in infrastructure, and just talking doesn't do that. Have you watched? Yes, I've watched Nick's show. That's not an answer. And Nick saying, I understand that the systems are in place that benefits the left and the liberals because that's what our government was born out of. I understand that better than you do, probably. I've done all of the reading on this. But when you get guys like J.D. Vance, who wants to tear down some of those leftist and liberal institutions, and because JD doesn't sufficiently agree with Nick, Nick decides to rally up his audience against him. That's counter effective. And this is not just a Nick problem. Like this is not a Nick problem, like Leggett is saying. This is an everybody problem. Like like this is a Shapiro problem. He doesn't want to change anything in the infrastructure. He doesn't want to win. Like you can't. Yeah. I told Gamer Jam I'd read his chat. You gotta love how all the retards who slept through Trump's first term and then spent 2024 saying Trump is anti-war are now defending another war for oil. In 5 years, they'll all be pretending they were all against it all along, just like they did for Iraq. The Iraq thing is a completely different situation. The United States government and the United States citizens built Venezuela's oil infrastructure, and then the socialist governments stole it from us. Um, so it's not like we're going in there for the natural resources. We already did. We got permission to, and then they stole it from us. Um, so taking it back is completely fine. Um, and once again, I don't think this is a war for oil. This was a single coordinated operation to arrest a foreign criminal who traffics drugs into America that kill American people. I mean, if every time you look at the military moving and you think that's a war, you're not going to make it. You have to think critically about things. You can't just look at like you have to get beyond like the teenage categorical thinking where it's like anytime the military does anything, that's war. And anytime uh, the police do anything, that's good because that's law enforcement. Anytime we follow law, that's good. Like you have to get past this teenage thinking. You guys have to start thinking like people, we have to start thinking critically about stuff. You have to look at this and go, wow, we got in and out that quickly. You have to look at what happened in Iran, right? We went to Iran, we fired a bomb, we left. Everybody said there was going to be a war. There was no war. We did what we wanted, we were gone. We did what we wanted in Venezuela. We have to stay there long enough to make sure that somebody just as bad doesn't get in. But that's not like there's no more fighting happening today. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this will turn into a war, but like we arrested a criminal we had indicted. If you are looking at that and going, the military did something, therefore it's war. Like, dude, come on. Like let's get it going. Um, let's start thinking a little past let's start looking at things beyond just like category finish. Let's like look at things critically. Let's like actually try to engage with the world as it is. Can a nation state steal its own resources away from a foreign corporation? Actual question. Property structures aside, what about stuff in the ground? That's the issue I have with the stolen point. Um, yeah, you can't steal the resources, but if you have an agreement with a foreign government to share the resources because they built the infrastructure for you, and then you renege on it so that you can make the money from the resources, and then use the money you make to harm that country, maybe your grave should be blown up. Like, what do you want me to? Yeah. What happens if we get another million Venezuelans in the country because of this? That has a pretty good chance of happening. It does not. We have a pretty good chance of having less Venezuelans in the country because of this. Um, because the reason we have Venezuelans in the country in the first place is because of the Chavez and Maduro regimes creating situations where people needed to get out of the country to be safe. What actually has a pretty good chance of happening is that a lot of the refugees who are here from Venezuela or political asylum seekers end up going back uh, because um, we've made the country safer. The opposite has a pretty good chance of happening. Um, Thursday again, making a better sell to 10 bros in the chat than the government made to the entire country. Yeah, 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 is what it is. By the way, if you're watching and you haven't said hi in the chat yet, please say hi. It helps me out if the chat rate goes quicker. Please click the like button. Please send it to a friend. Share it around. I want to do this. I want to be able to make some money on this so I can really put a lot of time into this. Um, I would really like to be able to give you guys a lot more value by having more time to prep, but I don't have a ton of time to prep right now because I have a day job that I have to do to make money to feed myself. Um, and yeah, put that bet down in Polymarket. I would, but I don't gamble on that kind of stuff. I play poker, but I don't gamble. Hello, Mud Party. Thank you for watching. And if you guys haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Um, that's all I have for tonight, really. I was also on Holdsworth recently, so I figured for, a little bit here at the end, we could take questions on Holdsworth, and I would do a bigger breakdown of the Holdsworth interview next week when I have my second screen so I can show you guys clips and stuff. But if anybody has any questions about anything I said in the Holdsworth interview, please let me know. Just throw it in here. Um, Throw it up in the chat. I would be happy to answer those questions for you guys. Um, Make sure I'm going to check through my sources and make sure I got through everything I wanted to get through today. Yep, I did everything here. But if nobody has any questions about Holdsworth, I think I will get off. But I'll wait a couple minutes. Yeah. The Holdsworth interview was really interesting. I will say this. It was really interesting because I said some things near the end of that interview that I thought were going to I thought they were going to cause a lot more uproar than they did. And the things that caused the most uproar were me observing sociological facts and trends, like the housing trends and the cost of living and stuff like that. Um, I really honestly expected nobody to have a problem with me talking about those things in the way that I did, just because I was presenting facts and then saying, like, hey, the housing market, the average age of a home buyer in 2005 was 39. Median age of a home buyer in 2005 was 39. That's too old as is. And now the median age of a home buyer is 59, which means that the median age of a home buyer has not, like the median year a home buyer was born, hasn't gone down in the last 25 years, which means you have an entire generation of people who haven't been able to effectively enfranchise themselves. Like that's a societal problem, and you have to have collective solutions to collective problems. Like that was the stuff people seemed more upset about than the stuff near the end where I was talking about like why young men like Hitler or whatever, uh, like people didn't seem to have a problem with the things that I thought that was going to be really offensive. I thought I was going to get trouble and flack for. Um, yeah, I couldn't figure it out. It was really weird to me. Um, yeah, the title was interesting. People also got mad about it in the comments and then watched the interview and were like, "Oh wait, I agree with this guy on this." Like people have to chill out. I enjoyed your interview. No questions come to mind. I don't bet either, but I wouldn't bet on less Venezuelans in the next 5 years. Not if American Psycho gets in the Oval Office and open borders again because 47 moves way too slow in defeating the left. Yeah, I think Trump moves too slow. Um, but the majority of the Venezuelans who have come in have either been sent here by Maduro, which means that they're not going to be sent here by Maduro, or they've escaped the Maduro regime, which means they're not going to be coming. And it does mean that a not insignificant percentage of them can be sent back now. And so just think about it this way, right? Okay, do this thought experiment and follow me here, right? Um, Stephen Miller wants to send back everybody, but he can't because the courts are going to rule certain people have asylum still, right? Um, if the circumstances of the asylum are no longer a problem, we can send those people back. So yeah, I would be shocked if it's like up even 5% in 5 years. I would be floored. Um, if I was going to bet on it, I would actually bet on it being lower. Um, I really enjoyed that interview. Thank you. All right. Well, guys, I'm going to go. Um, so I can go eat dinner with my friends here at the conference. I subscribed to your channel after the Holdsworth interview. Get on more channels. Get back on Avoiding Babylon. Get that Abade burn for your channel. I would go on again if they would have me, but I have a rule that I don't ask to be on people's channels, just because I've worked for bigger channels, and I know how annoying it is, and I know how much work goes into those things, and I don't want to ask for that kind of favor because it's really, I mean, people don't realize, but like, you know, uh, you're effectively asking for like $10,000 of free advertising all put together, um, to be on a show um, I mean, like Pints, you're effectively asking for like $50,000 of free advertising. Um, right? Like if somebody were to ask to be on Pints, you're like, give me $50,000, please. That's the same question. So, AB, if I were to ask them to come on their channel, Holdsworth having me on, I really appreciated it. I mean, he effectively gave me a huge gift. New subscriber, Sinan Can Amagu. I don't know what that. I can't pronounce that last word. Sorry, Star Wars name. Um, yeah, so Holdsworth effectively gave me a huge gift, and I really appreciate it. It was super kind of him, to give me that shot, to give me that exposure. If AB were to have me on, it would be similarly like a huge gift. And um, asking your friends for gifts is one thing. Asking them to give you that kind of value for nothing, um, is another thing. It's kind of rude. Um, so no, it's not the 10,000. It's not the ad. No, you don't. When I say pints, I'm like saying like the 10 grand would have been like pints like when I was working for pints like 6 years ago. And that's because that's how much money we got for ad reads. It's like if you were to pay someone to get as much exposure at as high a quality as you get on Pints with Aquinas, you would have to pay someone $10,000, right? If you were to pay someone for the exposure you would get going on Pints with Aquinas, like all those views with the quality and the editing and the like audience and the favorability and all that, like if you were to pay somebody for all the things that you're getting by being a guest on that show, you would have to pay them like 50 grand. I have no idea what Mac makes on ad reads. I didn't even know when I was there, honestly. The point I'm making is that like you have to understand in media, the value of certain assets in monetary value if you were to pay someone else to do them, just so you can understand your value, so you can understand the value of other people. Like you guys don't care about any of this. I could go on for so long. Um, so has anyone ever said no? To being on, I can't tell you if people have said no to being on any of the shows I work for. That's like, for obvious reasons, I can't tell you that. I can tell you I have said no to going on one channel, um, and I'm not going to tell you why or what channel it was. Um, and I can tell you, yeah, I mean, on any given day, a channel, even the size of AB, if I had to guess, is getting like 4 or 5 requests to be on, and they're, doing what, 2 interviews a week. So they're probably saying no to, like, it wouldn't shock me, 15, 20 people a week, you know? Yeah, like AB is probably saying no to like 15 to 20 people a week. I'm not kidding. If I had to guess. So, tell us. I'm not going to tell you because if I told you, I'd have to tell you why, and then it would cause drama. So, it's nobody you guys need to worry about. You're never going to figure it out. So, anyway, I love you guys all. Thank you so much for watching my streams. And I hope you all have a great weekend. Have a great Sunday. Say your prayers. Uh, Go Hoosiers. If you're from Oregon, kill your fuck you. Just kidding. Um, if you're from Alabama, you suck at football. Nick Saban doesn't love you anymore. He loves Signetti more than he likes you. Um, Anything else I want to say? Uh, yeah, say your prayers. God bless you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and all that stuff.